Welcome to Our Town, a 30-minute podcast brought to you by Best Bark Communications, a small but fierce client-centered marketing company powered by decades of experience and well-established business networks.
Hi, this is a conversation between old friends. When I knew that Frank Herzog was being inducted into the Washington Sports Hall of Fame, I said, what a unique opportunity to talk to Frank about his career in broadcasting, his career in Washington, and all the things he went through. And then yesterday it was fulfilled, Frank. What a great day for you and for the city.
It really was. I enjoyed it very much. It was a great honor.
Well, you know, I think what made it was your enthusiasm and the fact you had 21 guests. You were going to get a standing ovation no matter what.
I packed
That's
the
good
crowd.
planning.
I packed the crowd. I had grandnephews, grandnieces, grandkids. It was wonderful.
It was an absolutely sparkling day. As I told everybody, the two biggest ovations were Dexter Manley and Frank Herzog.
Oh, that's nice.
And that was great. And, you know, Dexter's still loved by a lot of people. There's a group trying to get him in the Hall of Fame, and I think they have no chance. He had drug problems, as you know. But, Frank, why in the world did you end up in North Carolina?
You know, when we decided to retire, we wanted to leave Washington because we didn't like the snow and we didn't like the traffic. And
And it ain't you.
And we made a list, Sharon and I made a list of, I think, 9 or 10 cities that we thought were potential places to go retire to. And we actually visited them. We had a list of things that we considered critical factors, and we gave each other the veto power. If we got to a city and didn't like it, if she vetoed it, we're done. And we kept going back to Wilmington, and it just kept meeting all the requirements. It's got a great healthcare system. It's got schools. It's got advanced elderly education. It's got a good airport. The traffic wasn't a big problem. We're 30 minutes from any one of 3 beaches. So all in all,
Leland is not on the water.
No, it's not on the water. We're inland. I'm 32 feet above sea level. I don't think that means much, but I'm glad to say 32.
That'll change.
Yeah,
that'll change.
That'll
believe
change.
Me. Frank, it was maybe you found, is Jurgensen still a big name in Wilmington?
Yes, a lot of people still remember Jurgensen. He's got a plaque hung up on the high school now, so the kids can go by and read it.
Well, I know where you guys grew up. We're going to get into your career, but I resent, maybe because it's me, people saying the voice of the Redskins, because I think you're bigger than that. All the things you did in broadcasting in this community, all the things you did for the people here, I think it's bigger than the Redskins, really. It's nothing bigger as an attraction, but you did so much, Frank. Radio. Remember radio?
You know, I looked back on it, Andy, this weekend. I think you're kind of forced to. And it's almost a storybook story. I was in the United States Air Force, stationed at Fort Meade, Maryland, in the National Security Agency.
Oh, yeah.
I got involved in a thing called Project Transition, where I got half a day off to go try what I wanted to do. I was working as a bellman at the Colony 7 Motel. I got $5 a day plus tips and dinner. That's what I was working with, and I met this beautiful woman.
That was a good job, though.
And we started the date. When we'd go out on a date, one of us would pay for the gas, and the other would pay for the hamburgers. So I got a chance, and I talked to Jim Snyder at WTOP Radio, and I talked to him. I called him 13 times on a Thursday.
Persistent.
13 consecutive Thursdays, and finally he said, "Okay, come in." He said, "We'll give you a job as a copy boy, $2 an hour." I said, "I'll take it." And the program manager said, "Why?" And I said, "Because my foot's in the door." And he said, "I like your attitude."
Oh, boy,
and it just
Frank.
went from there. I worked my way to production assistant, and then that following summer, they put me on overnight shift on summer and doing newscasts, and I learned from there.
Getting a foot in the door, Frank. I tell that so many times to young people that want to get into broadcasting. Whatever happened. If they asked you, I'd say change the Coke machine. Nobody does that anymore. But
Right.
Whatever you can do to get in the door. And then you did it, and you proved it, and I can relate to that. I did the same thing. But your career is radio. It was WTOP. And you also did Channel 9. That was WTOP TV, correct?
They were both in the same building when I started the WTOP. The radio station was on the 3rd floor, and the TV station was on the 5th.
That was in the new building, right, on Brandywine.
Yes. And so I got to circulate around and see people, but the talent there was unbelievable. You know, it was just, I was like a sponge. I mean, you had Dave McConnell and Jamie Bragg and Gary Nunn, who's now working for ABC Network.
Oh, my God.
it was just amazing, the number of the names I could rattle off. And so you just learned from them constantly. And I'd ask them questions and stuff because I knew I was going to go back to school. And well, what do I major in? What do I do? And they were all really helpful.
So you paid your dues and ended up with the radio manager was helpful to you to get in television, right? Peter Lund?
Yeah. And, well, Peter Lund came on as the general manager. They had this news director, Frank, I can't remember his last name, Frank George. And one day I walked by his office and he calls me in and he said, we've been talking and we think maybe you should do some play-by-play. And I said, tell you what, you get a team, I'll do play-by-play. And he said, tell you what, we got the bullets. And I almost fell over. And then I said, well, I don't know, and they said, look, I said, what about Tony Roberts? That's his job right now. And they said, we're not using Tony Roberts, we're changing our style. If you don't take the job, we'll hire somebody else. So I talked to Sharon and we said, okay, let's do it. And then I said to him, I don't know anything about the NBA. I've done college basketball, but I don't NBA rules or anything else. And he said, that's when Peter Lund said, I'll take care of it. And he got me into the NBA officials training camp at Roberto Clemente State Park in the Bronx, New York. And I spent 4 days with the NBA officials watching them play their little pickup games and talk about rules and go over films. And I got to talk to people. I talked to Richie Powers about calls. It was amazing. And when I walked away from that experience, I said, okay, I'm comfortable now. I think I can do the game.
You can handle it.
And then
that is an amazing story, though, to be invited into the camp with the official.
Well, and then you go on the air and you're doing your first few games and the people would come by and give you advice. Jim Lyman, coach at American University, went on to take the Sixers. He came up to me one night and he said, can I give you some advice? And I said, yeah. He said, give them half a step. I said, excuse me? He said, you're trying to keep up with them. You can't do it. Give them a half a step. It'll help you. And I said, I've never forgotten that.
Well, something that you did was right because I listened to you to the broadcast. And I recall having a conversation with the people here. Said, if we ever need a play-by-play man, we ought to go after Frank Herzog. But you're listening to Our Town with our guest, Frank Herzog, and we'll be right back.
Hi, Tony Sybil here to tell everybody about our wonderful restaurants at Washington Harbor. Tony and Joe's, the best seafood in the city. Nick's Riverside Grill, wonderful chops and steaks. Wonderful views of the Kennedy Center, Roosevelt Island, the Roslyn skyline. Spectacular. 2 bars outside right on the water. Fabulous food. For dinner reservations, call 202-944-4545. It's really a great experience. We'll see you down at Tony and Joe's or Nick's Riverside Grill.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen. Brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
Frank, we're going back to your NBA career beginning, and then you started doing the Bullets on a regular basis.
Right.
And took them to, I know of 2 major championship games, and I say took them because you were the voice. But you also, didn't you do the voice when they got blown away by Golden State or somebody?
No, that was not me.
Before you?
I covered that series.
Yeah.
It only lasted 4 games, so there wasn't much to cover. It was just...
Well, that's what I say. Since you joined the team, they got good.
Yeah.
You and her. And so who were some memorable players on those good Bullet teams?
Oh, they brought along Greg Ballard and Kevin Greavy. Wes Unseld and Elvin Hayes were fixtures there. Then they traded for Bob Dandridge and brought him into the other forward spot, which I think was a key to them winning. And they got Dave Bing was the point guard.
Local guy.
Yeah, but people didn't understand that. People didn't know. They kept it a secret. He was blind in one eye.
Oh, my God.
And Dick Motta said, we got to get us a point guard. We got to get rid of Bing and get us a point guard. And I said, why? He says, I just want somebody who can bring the ball up the court and start the play. That's all I'm asking for. So they got Tommy Henderson, who did that. He was great at that.
Remember him very well.
And it worked out a good 5-some. And then Larry Wright was drafted, who's a little jet. And they got Charles Johnson from the Golden State Warriors. They flew him in by helicopter to play in a game. So there was all kinds of stuff going on. Mitch Kupchak was a draft pick.
They really worked at improving the team.
Yes, they did. Bob Ferry told them after they won the championship, we were at a dinner to celebrate, and he said, I want you to know, I always said you guys didn't have the talent to be NBA champions. It wasn't here. I don't know how you did it, but you did it. So there was a little, there's a little good fortune going on.
That's a great story. I recall living through it with you as a spectator and a fan, that we were all holding our breath that they were going to blow it, and they didn't.
Right.
They beat San Antonio here. You did that game.
Did San Antonio? The kid lost his jersey, the San Antonio Spurs, and he wore a blanked Bullets jersey. The Sixers, the Philadelphia 76ers, game 6 of the Philadelphia series, which is with the conference final. The pressure and the tension inside that arena an hour before tip-off was unbelievable.
That was Dr. J, wasn't it?
Because my broadcast site was right down on the floor, and you could feel the air pressure coming down on you. It was just unbelievable. Dr. J.
Great games.
It really was. And the old line for the Sixers, their promotion all year long was, "We owe you one. Philadelphia, we owe you one." So when the Bullets beat them, I said, "Philadelphia, they owe you two." And then I went to Seattle and started the series against the Sonics. And about the third game in Seattle, PR guy said, "We have a young sportscaster who's blind, who does locker room interviews, and he likes to sit next to the visiting play-by-play man to listen to the game so he knows what to talk to his players about. Would you mind if he sat next to you?" I said, "No." So he came in. I'm not thinking. He came in. I gave him a set of headsets. He introduced himself. And then all of a sudden I'm going, I got a blind guy listening to me do a game. I have to explain what's going on in an NBA basketball game to a blind guy. And then I thought, you know what? All the listeners are the same way. They're not watching the game. They're blind. And I tell you, I sweated. Radio. I sweated like crazy. I felt more pressure, but it worked out well. And but I learned a lot from it.
You know, as a radio guy, that they're out there listening to you and they can't see you.
That's right.
And whatever you do, you got to explain it to them. But Frank, talk to me about some of the things. Why did you end up doing college basketball? Was that a sideline to your pro?
I was at a point where I was saying yes to everything. And I just wanted to do play-by-play. I loved play-by-play. I thought it was broadcasting in its purest form. Think about it. You walk into an arena, you walk into a football stadium, it's a blank slate. And you get to paint the picture. You get to tell people what it looks like, what it feels like, what the colors are, what the teams look like.
I remember you used to say the Redskins are at the left and the Pittsburgh's to the right. And I'm listening to radio.
Yeah.
But I could imagine what that looked like.
Yeah.
That's what you did all the time. Did you set the scene?
Picture? Yeah. And so I had an opportunity to do some work for CBS for 3 years. I did college basketball for them, and I did college football. And it was a marvelous experience. I learned a lot from being on a network telecast where play-by-play is very different.
Oh, absolutely.
But the other thing I learned was when you do it for a network, you're a soldier of fortune. You fly out on Thursday night, you go to practice on Friday, you do the game on Saturday, and then you get out of there Saturday evening. You're gone. And the only people who care about you are the PR people to make sure you're happy. And otherwise, if the people who are there don't know you from Donald Duck. So there was no feeling of camaraderie or community or anything else there. It was just you were doing that job.
Well, how about your career as a Maryland announcer for one of the most memorable games never played? The Maryland basketball. Was it Maryland, North Carolina? Was it a 9-5 game or something? Was it at North Carolina? Was it Duke?
Who was that?
It was your game.
I don't remember that game at all. It's like the Jets game. There's a 3-0 Jets game. I don't remember at all.
It was one of the coldest days of the year. I remember.
Then there was a South Carolina game that Maryland played them, and Jim O'Brien hit the last shot at the buzzer to win it.
But there was no scoring.
But there was absolutely no scoring. It was like 32-31 final.
A stall.
Yeah. That's when they put the 30-second clock in.
Yeah, after that.
Yeah, but I just covered that. I didn't broadcast it.
Oh, I thought you were the broadcaster.
No.
What was the game? Didn't you do a game with Gibbons? I mean, not Gibbons, with Jurgensen, where he was doing poetry?
Jurgensen was an excellent color analyst for basketball. And he and I, when we were at Channel 9, we did several Bullets games. And he would pick out things, and we could focus cameras in on things that people never thought of. The most memorable one to me was that we were doing a game against the Buffalo Braves in Buffalo. Adrian Dantley, the DeMatha product, was playing for Buffalo. Mike Reardon was going to guard him. And before the game, Sonny said, isolate on Reardon. He's going to undress him. He'll be on him so tight he won't be able to do anything. And it was a remarkable evening. I mean, Reardon just took Adrian Dantley apart. Just drove him nuts. He was all over him. It was hilarious.
That's tough to stop, Dantley.
Yeah,
He's a great player. Well, Frank, I don't want to get stuck on your basketball career because I want to talk about football. But we didn't have baseball then when you were in your heyday, right? We were all waiting for a baseball team to come.
Right.
And the people you work for, let me give you a couple of names with the were you here when we changed names? Certainly. When we lost the Bullets and got the Wizards?
Yes.
You were still working then. You were on the air then. Let me give you a couple of names. Abe Pollin.
Wow. We have a half hour for this show? They signed Elvin Hayes to a contract, big contract, and I shook my head, and Elvin said, what's the matter, Frank? And I said, when are they going to ask for too much? And he said, Frank, when they ask for too much, we won't pay it. I've never forgotten that. Every owner across the board, when you marveled at a quarterback's contract, hey, if it was too much, they wouldn't pay it. Another thing I haven't told many people is I was given an opportunity after the Bullets won the championship to have a championship ring. And I said, no, I'm a journalist. I don't need that. And about 10 years later, I told Sharon, that may have been a mistake because one of my favorite memories was that Bullets team. And Dick Motta had told me that he had the name of the foreman at the plant that makes the rings, and he had his phone number. He's going to call him and get a ring made. And I said, oh. So he gave it to me. But I thought, you know what? Before I call this guy, say, hey, I'm Frank Herzog, I want a ring, he's going to need some verification. So I saw Abe at a basketball tournament, and after the game, I went up to him and I said, Abe, not having a ring, I consider it one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made. And I have the name and phone number of the plant foreman, and I want to call him and order a ring. But before I do, I needed to get your permission. And he said, Frank, I'll take care of it. I said, no, Abe, you don't have to buy it or anything. I said, I just want your permission. He said, Frank, I'll take care of it. The next day, his secretary called and told me to go size my finger, the finger I wanted the ring on, to get a size, let her know. And I think maybe 5 or 6 weeks later, he called me, come on out, we got your ring. So I took the score sheet that I kept for the 7th game of the championship and had it matted and framed. And
I bet he loved that.
And I gave him that. He gave me the ring.
Oh.
And it's one of my prized possessions.
Well, it's just so much to talk about. We've got a lot more, but I remind people who are listening to Our Town with special guest Frank Herzog. This is Andy Ockershausen, who knows Frank too long. We'll be right back.
Our Town with Andy Ockershausen.
Are you retired or soon will be? Is your will up to date? Don't want to leave a mess for your family to clean up. I'm attorney Mike Collins, the guy who sends you those invitations to my estate planning seminar. I'll teach you how to save taxes, avoid probate, protect your heirs from lawsuits, bankruptcy, even the divorce court. Keep your money in your family with our innovative Reservoir Trust. Watch the mail for your invitation. Tuition's free when you register online at MikeCollins.com. That's MikeCollins.com.
We're talking with Frank Herzog, who was announced yesterday as the voice of the Washington Redskins. But I say he's bigger than the voice of the Washington Redskins. And Frank, those were tumultuous years in your career, covering a championship football team.
And again, it's almost like a storybook thing. I got the job at WMAL Radio because Dan Lovett quit and went to San Francisco. I had seen you at a Christmas party, introduced my wife at the Shoreham Hotel, introduced my wife to you, and I said to you then, if anything ever happens with the play-by-play job of the Redskins, I'd like to talk to you. And you said, sure, fine. And I figured it'd be 3 or 4 years. Boom. 3 months later, Dan Lovett's gone.
Timing.
I negotiate my deal with Jim Gallant, which incidentally was signed on a cocktail napkin from O'Donnell's Seafood.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
And started doing the games. Well, it was Jack Pardee's last year. Sam and I did the games. Jack Pardee did not have a good year, and he got fired. And Sonny Jurgensen then came in to be the third guy in the booth, and they hired this young coach named Joe Gibbs. And Sam didn't know anything about him because he wasn't very impressed with him. And Sonny loved him because he was an offensive coach.
Right.
But we signed Joe Gibbs at Channel 9 to a contract to appear on Channel 9. So I got to know him. I got to listen to his stories. He's a marvelous storyteller. And we got to know him, and then things just started to click. And you could see it. His assistant coaches, I think, really kind of took the bull by the horns and made things happen. And the players took a while to adjust and get comfortable. And I think Riggins finally solved a lot of the problem when he went to him and said, "Give me the ball. Just give me the ball." And things started to happen.
It took a long time for that. If you remember Gibbs' first year, there was a great story. Gibbs was very worried because he lost his first 5 games that year. His first year as a Redskins coach. And he said to the great writer, Maury Siegel, said, "Do you think that Mr. Cook," because he never called him Jack, it was Mr.
Right.
Cook, "think Mr. Cook would fire me?" And Siegel said, "Absolutely, he fired a country." He is a Canadian, and he renounced his citizenship.
The first reporter to ask him if he was concerned about being fired after losing to the Bears? Me.
Oh, in the post-game show that you guys did?
In the postgame. Are you worried about getting fired?
Well, Frank, the excitement that the team brought, because you guys brought it to them, the excitement was the people. Janice will tell you it was such an exciting time for us at WMAL because everybody was involved with the Redskins.
Right.
Nuns, preachers, whatever it was. And you guys made it all happen. I know that life was tough for you from time to time, dealing with these 2 egos, one on your left and one on your right. But that's what made the broadcast. Frank Herzog could handle it.
It wasn't tough. It was a challenge because I needed to I'm sitting there saying, I've got Hall of Famers on both sides. There's too much football knowledge there that goes untapped. I've got to get it out of them. I've got to ask questions that the guy on the street would ask.
Or sitting in a bar stool.
Sitting on a bar stool. Why did you say that? What do you think that? How do you know that? And it helped a lot. I think it helped me a lot to keep that in the back of my mind. And listen, Sonny and Sam were really great. They were great to me. They took the time to tell me stories and explain things. I got to know a little
some
bit
of them you
more.
couldn't tell on the air.
Oh, absolutely. But I got to know more about the psychology of a football player and what that was all about. So that helped the magic happen. And another thing that was interesting was early on, I mentioned television replay. And Jim Gallant, the producer, said, no, don't ever mention television. And I said, why? It's there. We've got it. Let's tell the fans what we're seeing on the replay so it can verify what we said or correct us. And then Sonny, who had good connections with CBS television, wound up so that every day on a visiting game, CBS would put a monitor from their direct feed in our booth. So we'd see the replays like crazy.
You could watch it.
Yeah. Then the other factor was the Redskins weren't very good. So Pat Summerall and John Madden didn't do the games. Brent Musburger didn't do the games. It was the C and D crew. Guys you never heard of and had no idea who they were who were doing the games. And guys who would say things that were kind of stupid or showed that they were kind of ignorant about the Redskins, and fans got turned off. And WMAL was very smart. They start to run this promo about turn down the sound on your TV and listen to the radio.
We bought a lot of advertising to promote that.
Unbelievable, the response of the people to that. I can't tell you today how many people yesterday told me, I used to turn down the sound on the radio and the TV and listen to you guys on the radio. I had a college kid like 26 years old who said, I always thought you guys were the sound on TV. I said, well,
there's a lot of that.
I said, well, didn't you get confused with the commercials? They weren't. I mean, there was a Ford commercial on TV and we were doing Geico. He said, no, I never noticed that. He thought we were the sound on television.
It was so magical, Frank. I mean, we attest to that. It was a great thing.
Well, and the beautiful
you referred
thing
to it,
and the beautiful thing was, it all kind of came together. The mix worked, the chemistry worked, the replays worked. To turn down the sound because you got bad TV announcers. When the Redskins got good, people were in the habit.
Oh, absolutely. It was well known around the league. We started it, and you guys capitalized on it. Now, the sad news that we hear about our friends is that our dear friend Sam Huff, who I know you were very close to, and I love Sam. He was a very, very, very good friend, is not the same Sam Huff we knew.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it is. There has been Alzheimer's in his family, both of his sisters. There could be some dementia, I think. I don't know. But it's obvious that Sam's not the same person he was. But he's still hanging in there. He still smiles like crazy.
I know everybody's trying everything they can to. I talked to him on the phone. He doesn't know who I am, but then after a couple of minutes, he'll remember that I owe him money, which is not true. But we go through that. But and Sonny's doing fine. I mean, he's hit the big 82, and I don't know how long he's going to work. But without Herzog, the show loses something because now we have a show with nobody that grew up with the Redskins.
Just remember, you've also got a show without a Joe Gibbs football team. Perhaps the greatest Redskins team for a decade ever. And now this young Redskins team is starting to get together. They won the division last year. They're starting to get better. There's certainly the potential there for them to do something. But it's a tough task. Like I said, you talk about great timing. Here we are. Here I am. I mean, I could have... Hey, listen, I could have waited another 10 years and gotten the Redskins when they were awful. I remember Johnny Holiday. I was listening to Johnny Holiday do a football game when Maryland was bad against East Carolina, and they were getting beat like 55-3. And afterwards, I called him and I said, I just want you to know I understand how you felt, and you did a wonderful job of trying to keep your spirits up when you were broadcasting a disaster.
Well, you could relate to it. You know what you're going through.
You know what that's
right,
like. It's awful.
So what we are hoping for is this Redskins. I was going to ask you about a couple of people. Now, you weren't here, of course, but what do you know about RG3? You're an old football guy.
Well, you hope
you're not old, Frank. You're a football guy.
I hoped that he would come in here and be good and prosper. I think what the coaches found when he came here was he could only do one thing, and that's what he did at Baylor. And they tried to make it work, and it worked brilliantly, but he's too small, and he got hurt, and he's done. Now, what I'm thinking now is that he's gone somewhere else, and that perhaps, given the time that he's had off and the chance to learn to be a pocket passer, he can reemerge and do a great job. He's a good kid. I don't think Dan Snyder did him any favors by being his buddy. I don't think that helped either.
That's a classic example, getting too close to your players.
Yeah.
That would never have happened with the old owners because they weren't that way.
No, that's right.
How would do you have a relationship with the erstwhile Mr. Cook? He said, he never said to anybody, call me Jack, I'll tell you that.
Frank, my dear boy. How are you? I interviewed him before I was doing the Redskins in Los Angeles when he owned the Lakers. And I said, you've signed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for a lot of money. Any regrets? Never. He's the greatest basketball player in the world. Don't be careful when you put your tape recorder on my desk. It's 15th century Louis XIV. He was something.
He probably was.
He was something.
What a character.
Yeah.
But you lived through some very, very special owners. But I like to ask you about Joe Jackson Gibbs.
Joe Jackson Gibbs is right where he should be as a race car guy. Yeah.
He's doing promotions for the network
That was his passion all along. And I remember when he introduced his first race car for Interstate Batteries up in Carlisle. And I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe the reason he came back to the Redskins was to raise more money for his racing thing.
That was the popular understanding. He needed the dough.
Yeah.
He didn't need the team. He needed the money.
Listen, he was a marvelous human being.
Great guy.
Great storyteller. He's the kind of guy you love to be around because he would tell you a story about coaches and weird things. That,
he was a cigar smoker, too. He was clandestine.
I think he cut back a little bit.
Yeah. He and Mr. Jurgensen would share their cigars in the corner. But, Frank, it's so exciting that you're back, and I don't know that this will happen again, but you're always welcome here at our show, our town. There's still our town. We've got so much to be thankful for.
Yeah.
It's a great place to live, and you loved every minute of it.
Sure.
But the traffic hasn't gotten 10 times worse, as you remember.
Yeah.
It's just awful. And I envy you being down there in North
They got
Carolina.
to fix the roads, Andy. They got to fix the roads.
I don't know how you do it.
270's a mess. George Washington Parkway's embarrassing.
You know, the suggestion was made, make all roads one way out of town, and then you don't have a problem. But that can't work.
Let me
It's
think
a
about
North Carolina
Let me
solution.
think about that.
But Frank, thank you very much for being here and telling us about our town, because you know so much about it, and I know you'll appreciate the fact that this has been great to have you, and I'm so pleased for yesterday too for that swearing in. I hope you got the good pictures, because that's special,
It was special.
and there'll never be another Frank Herzog.
Well,
As I used to tell Steve Gilmore, goodbye. But to me, Frank. Thank you again, Frank.
it's been a pleasure.
Our town.
Been a pleasure to be reunited with one of Washington's great broadcasters.
This is a great, great station we had, but things happen, baby.
That's right.
Thanks, Frank.
You bet.
Thanks to your family and the 21 guests at the ballpark.
They ate a lot of hot dogs.
You've been listening to Our Town Season 1 with your host, Andy Ockershausen. New Our Town podcast episodes are released each Tuesday and Thursday. We welcome your comments and suggestions on how you like the show or who you'd like to hear from next. Catch us on Facebook at Our Town DC or visit our website at OurTownDC.com. Our special thanks to WMAL Radio in Washington, D.C. for hosting our podcasts.